So it's a great pleasure and honor to give the presidential address to Southwest Surgical Congress, which is, I have to give a lot of thanks. And I started adding thank you slides yesterday, and I added like 95, and I've realized that was probably too much, so I've tried to consolidate things. To start, I really owe a great debt of gratitude to Dr. Carrie Page. I wouldn't have been involved in the Southwest Surgical without Dr. Page, and I really appreciate everything you did for a young person who was, Brian paints me in a little better light than I was, pretty rough product at the time. So thank you, Dr. Page. Thanks to Noni, Jill, Denise, Chris, Heather, Jack, for all you do for the Southwest Surgical. Been great partners over the years, and it's very much appreciated. I'd like to thank the leadership of the Southwest Surgical Congress. All have been so supportive of me and other young people. It's really greatly appreciated. And then for friends, I have hundreds of friends in the Southwest Surgical Congress who, it's a general surgery meeting. We've talked about this. There's people with a lot of different interests, which makes it, it's the strength of the Southwest Surgical Congress. It's not just trauma surgeons, not just surgical oncologists, not just minimally invasive, but a friendly group of people who are great colleagues and friends. And so for the young people in the audience, I would really emphasize, I have 7 P's to be, and the first P is participation. And it's been a real plus for my life. And I think it's helped give me, hopefully, a more accurate perspective, because people don't just agree with me. And I think it's very important. It's a very important society, and it's been a great privilege for that. For the young people, these are all residents and students who presented at Southwest Surgical. As I said in the new members, the young people are the lifeblood of any organization, and it's really an honor and privilege to get to know you through the Southwest Surgical Congress, and I personally feel very confident that the future is in good hands, and I really appreciate it. I think arguably the Southwest Surgical Congress is the most family-friendly meeting I know. It is. I would thank the members for bringing your spouses, your significant others, your parents, your children, and for allowing me to take pictures of them, which I really and truly enjoy. The Southeast Surgical Congress has been a key partner. Can't go without thanking them. The Southwest Surgical Congress, from a historical standpoint, really came from a relationship with the Southeastern. And I have to thank these faculty. I'll just name them. These are the early surgery faculty from my medical school. They've helped me when I didn't really deserve it. Ken Srinick loaned me like $200 whenever I was a resident so I could get a medical license. Didn't even remember he did it, honestly. So Ken Srinick, Wade Rogers, Arthur McPhee, Tony Cruz, Basil Pruitt, Carlos Pastana, Brad Oust, Wayne Swessinger, Carrie Page. I also have to really thank Tim Fabian for really at a key time in my professional development, really taking an interest in me. It was really a great time in Memphis, and I'm very appreciative. So thank you very much. For my colleagues, these are my colleagues, my surgical family. What a tremendous group of people. I'll steal a Wally Ritchie quote that Wally Ritchie somewhat famously said when he was in a meeting. He was the board. Someone asked him, "Well, who does all the work, Wally, when you're traveling around?" And he said, "The same people who do it when I'm at home." Yeah, I think that's true, actually. So I really appreciate it. And I know sometimes I make you feel like this, and I appreciate you having the patience with me whenever I do that. I really like to thank Brian Eastridge. Brian kind of gave my talk, honestly, and he did it better than what I can, so it's going to be tough, but I'm going to try to do that. But I would really seriously want to thank Brian Eastridge for not just the introduction, but for those of you who know and have done it, really the program committee chair really sets up the meeting and does all the work for the meeting, along with the recorder. And so between Brian and Courtney Scaife, who as the recorder for the organization does tons of work. Thank you both, Brian and Courtney. And then for my family, this is my family. As Brian said, we have 3 really wonderful children, Elizabeth, Jackson, and Mary. Lloyd Mclean, as many of you know, a famous North American surgeon from Canada, died this year, and his memorial. At his memorial, I was at where his memorial was read for him, and they said that his children had said that they thought they were the most photographed children in the world, and I leaned over to the person next to me and said probably the second most photographed children in the world. But really for Elizabeth and Jackson and Mary, I love you, I'm proud of you. And I've really cherished every minute of every time I've spent with you, even when trying to line you up for these crazy, stupid pictures. For Sherry, Brian said it correctly, Sherry's been an anchor in my life, a supporter, believer, loving, kind, forgiving. She really gives me a grounded perspective, and I really thank you for making me a better person. So I'm going to talk about perspective. I'm going to speak from a patient point of view, surgeon, photographer. I can speak from all 3 of those. Tyler Hughes showing up here, just so you know, if you don't like the talk, you can blame Tyler, because Tyler, I was talking with him at dinner at the Southeast Surgical Congress. We talked about topics, and he thought this would be a good topic. So this is a quote from Sir Berkeley Moynihan, which basically emphasizes to me that we are all the inheritor of a gift that we don't think about very much. But he basically clearly states that the honor of the profession of medicine is the cumulative honor of all who've gone by in the previous 2.5 millennia. As a patient, December 21st, 2011, I was doing some online Christmas shopping, and I had atrial fibrillation, paroxysmal atrial fibrillation for more than a decade. As I was ordering, really the whole world really grayed out. Gray is not the right, it was gold out, really. It was a very gold color. I was really struggling to maintain consciousness. Strange, you're not expecting it. I was sitting there, and as I did start to regain consciousness, I realized I had a right hemiparesis and expressive aphasia. I knew it very quickly, but of course, when you have an expressive aphasia, expressing it is a problem. My daughter was there, and I'll just say she really made the difference in that with her help, I was in the hospital getting treatment within 50 minutes because she took action. But I was trying to talk to her, and I was trying to explain it, and I said, I need to go to the hospital. But I said, I need to go home. And then I tried to say I need a doctor, and I said, I need my friends. It's very frustrating. If you've had patients with expressive aphasia, it's a frustrating thing to try to communicate. But finally, words started coming out, and I finally said, I need a neurologist. And she's looking at me, she's going, she's now trying to deduce all this. First she thought I was joking, and then she's realizing, Daddy wants his friends, and I don't think he's friends with the neurologist. I don't know what this is. And it's like, she's trying to figure it all out. And so anyway, it eventually came true, and really thanks to her, I made it to the hospital to my friends, who if you really want something done in our hospital, these are the people that you get to do it. And so I'm not telling you this for you to feel bad. I actually want you to feel good. I want you to feel good for me, because I'll just say that was one of the most positive experiences of my life. You may ask, what do you feel? And I'm going to speak from the patient's point of view, because some of your patients, in fact, the majority of your patients, in the culture they live in and in their way that they do things, they don't express gratitude very well, and some of them can't express the gratitude. But I will just say, the feeling of gratitude, I can't really describe in words, such a profound feeling of gratitude. And I want you to know that your patients feel the same way about you. Even though sometimes they can't express it. And joy and knowledge. I learned from the patient perspective, really, what it's like to really not have any real control. And I also realized, very importantly, that time, we do not have unlimited time. We do not have unlimited time. You do not have unlimited time. What you want to do, you need to do it now. Not tomorrow, not next week. You do not have unlimited time. And I learned, and I know, I don't like it that much, but I know that I will have to go that way again, that I was where I was that morning of December 21st. We do not have unlimited time. As a matter of fact, if you survey patients at the end of their life, there's some common end-of-life regrets that people express. Not spending enough time or attention with family. Not mending broken relationships with family. Chasing rather than choosing happiness. A failure to follow dreams, or a failure to take a chance or a stance. These are things when they don't regret, not generating enough RVUs, honestly. They don't. And what I'm going to talk about is about people. I really believe this quote. I believe it's more true in healthcare than any other field, that talent and people are the key, and that really people are far more valuable and more important than the financial capital. As a matter of fact, if you do a business survey, this is from Marshall Goldsmith's book, and you survey stars in organizations, you ask them why are they staying, they basically say what is similar to people near their end of their life in palliative care say. They say they're staying because they're finding meaning and happiness now. They like the people. It feels like a team. I can follow my dreams. And this organization has given me a chance to do that. So how to achieve that? Well, it takes from you, and I'm going to say that it takes conscious leadership. And you don't have to have a title to be a leader. But it takes conscious decisions. And I'll just say, as a chair of a department of surgery, it is far more likely for me to do unconscious harm than unconscious good. It's far easier to do the wrong thing unconsciously than do unconscious good. Sherman Goodwin, who we'll hear more about, said it in about 1850, country doctor, deliberation to do evil is less harmful in some than carelessness about doing good. So let's define I know I had a really vague title. It's Define the Profession and Professionalism. I'm going to look at it from a number of different perspectives. The original professions were divinity, medicine, and law. If you look up professional in the dictionary, well, when I was at Odessa High School, I thought the definition of professional was someone who got paid for playing a sport. That's what I thought professional meant. That was my high point of knowledge. But the common definition is someone who belongs to one of the learned professions, an expert, person who's an expert at work. Leonard Berry from Texas A&M Business School sums up what I think we tend to think in medicine of professionalism. If you think about your students and residents, and what you expect is pretty much what Dr. Berry says here. This is another definition of a profession. In the U.S., this term commonly describes educated people, mostly salaried, who have a comfortable salary, engaged in creative and intellectually challenging work. The ACGME, to its credit, of the 6 core competencies, lists professionalism. It's number 5. It's the 5th core competency. And actually, the ACGME gives a pretty good, I believe, from my view, a pretty good view of what that is. Residents are expected to demonstrate compassion, integrity, and respect. The key, number 2, is key responsiveness to patient needs that supersede self-interest. And a pretty good definition, I think, of professionalism. But if you really go back to the origins of professionalism, where it came from, since I started looking into this and dealing with this topic, really the word professionalism comes from a profession, what we profess. In the beginning, it was a profession. A public declaration was what a profession was. It was a profession of faith, a profession. In fact, if you look at the nearest to the core of Latin, professare in Italian, to confess, to profess, that's what it means. So a profession. Rakesh Khurana, who was at Harvard Business School, now is the dean of Harvard College, and his group basically sums it up extremely well to me. They basically provide a point-by-point working definition, and I'll just quickly go through them. You've probably already read them but a common body of knowledge, a system for certification, a commitment to use specialized knowledge for the public good, and a renunciation of the goal of profit maximization in return for autonomy and monopoly power, and a code of ethics. Dr. Khurana writes, and it is a little worrisome to me, honestly, when a business professor writes most cogently about professionalism compared to particularly us in medicine, but I think he sums it up really well, that a profession is not just about what you get, it's about what you renounce, and that we need education not only in the privileges, but the responsibilities. So about 3 or 4 years ago, at the white coat ceremony, it's somewhat like going to church. I'm sure at your medical schools you have a white coat ceremony where you have everyone come, and it's the new medical students are coming in. It's really a very, very nice ceremony. I just took to survey the people around me, and these are all faculty of our medical school. And I just asked them, tell me what professionalism means to you. And I don't like to say I was surprised, but I was a little surprised by the answers that they gave. These are the answers they gave. The patient's interests come first. Service to the patient, healing, commitment to education, and finally dedication to lifelong learning. These are all separate people. To be professionals, to be honest, where honest stands for honorable in principles, intentions, and actions. Professionalism is honesty, a commitment to patient's interests first. Be faithful to your profession and to be honest. I think to be professional is to be moral, where moral means to know, to believe, and to practice what is right. What is right is well defined, dating back to the famous Hippocratic Oath. David Hillis, the chair of medicine at the time, said, to me it means kindness, courtesy, and competence, because without competence it's fraudulent. He went on to say it means civility, decorum, empathy. So in summary, professionalism, looking at all these different perspectives on professionalism, it's a moral conduct serving a greater good, service to the patient above self, certified competence, empathy, civility, specialized body of knowledge, and continuing education. Again, Rakesh Khurana, who's now become the dean of Harvard College, said, "I will create value for society rather than extract it." A single sentence definition. So if I take all that, my summary of that would be, this is my summation of it, what is it that we profess? What do we really profess? Well, we profess that we dedicate ourselves to the service of humanity, and most importantly, we place the needs of the patient before our own. And we will base our knowledge and actions on objective scientific truth as best we can determine it. That is really what we profess. The question is, what do we do? So, this is not all just theoretic. This is not all just philosophy, because there are business models. And those business models make a real difference. Each one of you in the audience has a business model, and I'm just going to walk through some ones relative to what we do. There's a corporate model. Well, what is the corporate model really about? Well, the corporate model is an ownership model, and the fiduciary responsibility of the corporation is to serve its owners. That's what a corporation does. It serves its owners. Usually, and the goal is for it to serve its owners. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's its first responsibility, is to serve the owners. What's a labor model? I was at a meeting and had a really very good talk and talked about unionization in medicine, and there was not a lot of, I expected more discussion than I heard from it, but labor model, the labor union serves its members. That's what it's there for, to protect its members. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's its model, is to serve its members. A professional model has the stated goal to serve its customer, in our case, to serve the patient. There are real differences with those models. So what is the state of professionalism? In 1963 in Daedalus, Kenneth Lynn wrote, "Everywhere in American life, the professions are triumphant." What about now? Well, there's all sorts of external threats to professionalism: economics, market forces, technology, broader social changes, incivility, bad behavior. And in the same journal, 40 years later, they clearly put it really very clearly. The growing importance of making money, potent market forces made it increasingly difficult to even determine what a professional is. Layer that on top of the modern pitfalls of noise, distraction, and marketing. There's a tremendous amount of noise, tremendous amount of information, busyness, and clutter in all of our lives. You know it in medicine. It's not just in medicine, though. It's in the modern life. The danger is, with the noise and the clutter and the busyness, is a loss of perspective, clarity, and focus. A loss of clarity, perspective, and focus, which those things, I'm going to tie in photography to this. But the internal challenges are what I'm going to focus on, not the external challenges. What are the internal challenges? Perspective, vision, and the consequences of lack of perspective. I'm not going to talk about fear, anger, and selfishness, although I would have liked to have, but it'd be too long. Leon Benson, I've never met him, but I've read the article, and actually seems like a very solid surgeon to me, very good person in this article in the Washington Post in 2007. And, he sums up kind of, if you look at the Board of Governors survey, inconvenience, fatigue, poor compensation, difficulty with resources. The only thing he leaves out that doesn't show up on there is malpractice. But otherwise, covers all the bases for what shows up on, and actually I think if we were being honest, everybody would, maybe not everyone, but a great majority would say they've had this thought. Some more malignant versions of that perspective. This is from a resident in American College of Physician Executive Surveys in 2006. We all became angry people, angry at our patients for being sick, angry at our colleagues for calling us, angry at our administrators for squeezing every last ounce of work out of our bodies, and I intend to change careers as quickly as possible. What about the older physician in that same survey? Not very positive, I'd say. And if you look at surveys done primarily through the American College of Surgeons, burnout, career satisfaction, personal health and wellness are all been raised as issues among surgeons, among practicing surgeons, serious issues. And these have been the focus of invited lectures here in at least 3 or 4 of the past, in the past decade, 3 or 4 talks. So I'm going to ask, though, a question to me, which is, and I'm just going to be up front. I'm going to be very clear that I'm not a very good salesperson. I'm just going to say, if you have that perspective, I'm going to try to change it right now. That's what I'm going to try to do. And is the problem, you have to ask, is the problem simply one of perspective rather than reality? And is the problem related to the light that we choose to shine on the profession, and is there a better or more correct perspective or a better way to illuminate the profession? And I'm going to walk through what I think is just a simple, it's not really science, but it's an observational approach to perspective and illumination. Before I do that, got to touch on the words of Ambroise Paré, hero of French surgery about 500 years ago. I was but 12 years old when this is Ambrose Paré writing. I was but 12 years old when this appetite was awakened within me, seeing and recognizing after a difficult and skillful operation of which I was a witness, how useful and helpful was the science of surgery. It appeared to me to be beautiful and best of all things to work thus for the relief and cure of suffering. Beautiful and best of all things to work for the relief and cure of suffering. And then he goes on to say, and from that moment on, I promised myself that this would be my task. The desire and pleasure to be useful was my principal aim. And since that time, at 12 years old, I have moved towards that end. And he became the surgeon and physician of kings. This will be the subject of our exploration of this bluebonnet. It's a beautiful little flower. It's delicate, but it's very tough and enduring. These small lupines, those of you from Colorado will say these are just wimpy little lupines compared to the ones we have, and you would be correct. But it's a small little weed-like flower. It's endemic to South Texas. If you try to cultivate them and grow them, they don't grow very well. They grow much better on a rocky slope. They seem to thrive under adverse circumstances. And I'm going to make a metaphor, very clear metaphor, of this little flower as the profession. So this is a typical, what you'll see if you walk through a field in springtime. What people show you are the beautiful confluent fields of bluebonnets, which they are spectacular, I will say. But typically, this is more what you see, not particularly inspiring, if you want to be honest about it. And if you're not really focused on the flower, if you look around, if you look around, you'll find a flower that looks something like that one. Well, if we now focus on the flower, it's a little better picture. We're actually focusing on the flower. A little better perspective. crop out some unnecessary things, reduce our depth of field. Not a bad picture of the little flower. But if you drop your perspective, as Dr. Eastridge stole my punchline, I'll just say, but I mean, if you drop down and you change your perspective, still though, lighting is not very good, and honestly, to get the full glory of the bluebonnet, you need to see better lighting on the flower, and you need to see the context of where the bluebonnet lives. All that's simply obtained by shining a little soft, gentle light on that one flower. And now, the real glory of the flower comes into view. The true beauty of the flower. It's the same flower that we were looking at. Yet now, you see that it is actually really something special. And if I think this is my experience with humans, if humans think it is special, then they will protect it, they will defend it, they will look after it with kindness and care. Example 2. This is a vacant lot near a La Quinta hotel. I tried to pick places this year where I wouldn't get, accosted by EMS and police. This is a flower in that field, and I would say not a bad picture of the flower, but again, not very good light on the flower. Now we have the serious beauty of Lupinsis texensis. And then, once you're focusing on the profession and paying attention to it, and you're just observing it, you're not ignoring it, and once you focus on the flower, and you're laying there for a little while, then the sky changes. And you notice. And the sky itself is spectacular. Literally, that changes in 3 minutes. Would never be noticed unless you're paying attention to it. Context, photographic context. You've seen this picture. It was one of the pictures that I showed earlier. Again, a pretty good picture of the blue, and I've photoshopped it, I've cut it out using Photoshop. By the way, no Photoshop enhancement really in those pictures. But here I've cut the flower out and put it on a gray background. That is the context. And that is the profession of medicine. There is hardly a field, I'll just say there is not a field that has such a rich history and context that's been so well documented over 2.5 millennia as medicine and surgery. As a matter of fact, these flowers look better in a stormy background. They look better when the clouds when there's trouble forming on the horizon. These little bluebonnets look better when a storm has just happened and they've had little poor petals knocked off of them from a hailstorm. They look better in context. And if you're different or you have different ideas, look at the little flower who's different, how beautiful that flower is among all the flowers who are the same. Maybe you feel, if you're a young person, you feel you're too small to do something. This is a tiny little flower. So beautiful, that little flower. So I think there's a better perspective. I would encourage us to reframe the profession from a different perspective. In my mind, a more correct perspective, and to shine a gentle, soft light on the subject. So how? How to do that? My residents accuse me of giving philosophical talks and not giving them a prescription of how to do it, which is true to some degree. So how to maintain an accurate perspective which leads to an improvement of the profession? It's a very practical people ask important practical questions. a perspective that would lead to improved patient care, healthier physicians, and a better society. Well, this is a very interesting story. I never would have come on this article, the Southwestern Historical Quarterly, January 1952. Sherman Goodwin, Texas physician. As a matter of fact, I've come to this article over 4 or 5 years. And I will say I didn't pay much attention. I did pay attention to it, but I didn't pay enough attention to it in the beginning. That I didn't notice who the author, I didn't know who the author was. Harry Ransom? I didn't know who Harry Ransom was. Well, there's the Harry Ransom Center at the University of Texas in Austin that has a Gutenberg Bible in it and has the first surviving photograph ever taken in the world at the Harry Ransom Center. And this is the Harry Ransom Center. I'm going, whoa, Harry Ransom? Who is Harry Ransom? Thinking, I was just happy to learn about Sherman Goodwin, but obviously Harry Ransom in 1952 was something. I mean, they built this building. Well, he was an English professor at UT Austin. He became dean. I think he became president. And Harry Ransom cared enough to learn about Sherman Goodwin, so poor dummy from Odessa should maybe too. So who was Sherman Goodwin? Well, he was a New Englander, not a Texan. He was a New Englander. He went to medical school at Jefferson College. He contracted tuberculosis, and so he went to look for a more favorable climate. That led him to Texas. I don't know why, but it did. And he settled in Victoria. He kept a personal journal writing only to himself. He was not writing to us. He was not publishing his work. He kept a personal journal to himself, and he happened to be quoted in P.I. Nixon's Texas Surgical Society presidential address in October 1st, 1956. P.I. Nixon almost certainly heard about him through Harry Ransom's article, I will just say. Well, what was Victoria like circa 1849? It was 25 miles from the coast, had a population of 800. The Texas Revolution just ended 14 years earlier. 9 years, the famous Comanche war chief Buffalo Hump had raided Victoria. Anesthesia had been demonstrated in Boston 3 years earlier, and Lister was still in medical school. It was a poor frontier town with primitive medical conditions. So I would ask you, the people in this audience, to say, what's our world compared to Sherman Goodwin's world? What is our world compared to his? Is it less convenient for us? Do we have less comfort? Do we have less support? Do we have less knowledge? Do we have fewer resources? Do we have lower pay than Sherman Goodwin had? And honestly, the answer for every single one of those questions is no, 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 and no. But he's writing to himself, and he asks, why science? Why medicine? He's going to give us a prescription here. He never would have thought it, honestly, writing a journal to himself. But he asks, how many times does the doctor ask, why science? Why medicine? What are the rewards? And he right very quickly gets into subtlety. The doctor's rewards are subtle and unsure, and none of them easy to earn. It is a subtle, beautiful flower, but it's subtle. It's not, doesn't beat you over the head. His first reason, Sherman Goodwin was, it's clear from his writing, was a strongly devout religious person. He gives 7 reasons. First, the sense of life going on. The sense of active, unpredictable life is keener in medicine than in any other pursuit. Wonder. Wonder. He says, how? Why medicine? How do you maintain your interest? Wonder. The first time I saw a scanning electron micrograph, I thought, oh my gosh, how amazing is that? Things we take for granted are simply amazing. Second, there's the working of a cure. These are cures deserving celebration, Most of my residents and faculty and people I work with, they don't consider anything a big success unless there's, stitches put in the aorta or something like that. I mean, it's like, CPR has to be done several times. I mean, it's like, only then is it a big success. Appendicitis likely killed 10% of the Western world before Reginald Fitz. It is a life-saving operation. Cholecystitis, hernia, burn. Go to the lesser developed world and you will see the consequences of those problems untreated. These are causes for celebration. It should be a high five after draining a perirectal abscess. For a cure. Also, there's a tendency to think that all your training, you have to save thousands of people, to make a difference. What about one life saved? One life. This little boy, I've known since he was 3 years old. I wasn't on call when he came in. David Rood and Charlie Godinez were on call. He was mauled by a dog, and he had pre-hospital CPR twice. It was a tiny little thing, totally eviscerated, horrible. This is him about 5 years later playing soccer, 6 or 7 years playing soccer. This is him as a freshman now. Pampa Daily News, 1950, July 24th, 1950. My mom was in this car crash. 2 of her friends were killed, 3 people total killed. She had a brain injury, she had a femur fracture, she was in hip spica cast for 3 months. Primitive care, but she survived. If she wouldn't have survived, I wouldn't have been born. Wouldn't have been born. You don't really think about one life saved. One life. Third, there's the education of the doctor's own nature by the slow pursuit of science and art. In the beginning, we need only knowledge, but we can't live with knowledge alone. It is nothing unless we join ourselves with life. My gosh, this is a country doctor in Victoria, Texas. Fourth, as we know the good among men, we learn service and their reward. Our view of man changes, and it is a challenge to everything we've learned. Is the patient evil? We will strive to save him as if he were good. We do not profess to understand all human existence. Our undertaking is only to sustain and improve it. Interpreting in modern terms, our patients are flawed as we are flawed, and it's our responsibility. It's not to sit in judgment. Our responsibility is to care for the patient as if they were our own, especially when it's most difficult to do so. This was the portion quoted in P.I. Nixon's address. He says, we have to take a stand at times, and it is something to have labored for the betterment of life. It is something to have labored for the betterment of life. You hear the echoes of Ambrose Paré about 350 years earlier. Beautiful and best of all things to work thus for the relief and cure of suffering. And seventh, you don't have to be religious to appreciate Dr. Goodwin's thoughts here. Finally, through the very pursuit of science, the doctor comes into the service of God. That is why he is practicing medicine in Victoria, Texas. So, summarizing, I would say that it's incumbent upon us to reframe the profession from a different perspective. As I've said, in my mind, a more correct perspective. You might disagree. If you disagree, I'm not going to argue with you too much, but I would say that you must consider it from all the perspectives, not just from one perspective. All the perspectives. Not just, you can't just look at the flower from on high that looks like a weed and ignore it. You must look at it in its full glory. And the best way to do that is to shine a gentle, soft light on the profession. For photography here, a photography tip, what makes for a soft light? It's simply the ratio of the light source, the size of the light source to the subject. So if you don't know what is the most softest light, would be an infinitely large light shining on a small subject. And if you look at it from a different perspective, and you look at it from the perspective that reveals the beauty, the true beauty of the profession, then you see something worth protecting, worth defending, worth maintaining, which I would say is really our responsibility. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be your president this year, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you.